Well, I didn't expect to make this video today, but the Toronto Raptors fired coach Nick Nurse on Friday, sources told Woj. Nick Nurse is out as the Toronto Raptors head coach. Nick Nurse, who coached the Raptors to the franchise's first NBA title in 2019, met with team president Masai Ujiri several times in recent days before a final decision was made Friday to dismiss him, sources said. And I quote, "The decision to make a change like this has never arrived at easily or taken lightly, especially when it comes to a person who has been an integral part of this franchise's most historic accomplishments and who has been a steady leader through some of our team's most challenging times," Ujiri said in a statement. "As we reflect on Nick's many successes, we thank him and his family and wish them the best in future. This is an opportunity for us to reset, to refocus, to put into place the personnel and the players who will help us reach our goal of winning our next championship," close quote. Masai Ujiri also repeatedly mentioned changing the culture of the team was at the heart of the decision. And he also said this, "I think changes are going to be made on all fronts." And then finally, another quote that stood out to me is Ujiri saying this: "This has been hard the last week and a half. Adding the goal of having a replacement in place before the NBA draft made the most sense. There was nothing contentious about this. Winning and the future is where we have to look." Sources said Nurse had 1 year and more than $8 million left on his contract. So, end of an era, guys. Nick Nurse will leave the Raptors with, of course, the 2019 championship, the 2020 NBA Coach of the Year award, and a 227-163 record in 5 seasons as head coach. Nick Nurse will now be a part of the Houston Rockets coaching search, sources said. Now, there were obviously many signs throughout the season of disconnect between Nick Nurse and the front office. The Raptors, of course, did not meet expectations. They weren't even close. They finished with a disappointing 41-41 record. They were 9th in the Eastern Conference, and they lost their first playing game against the Chicago Bulls, and it was an embarrassing loss at that. And Nick Nurse's name was linked to the Houston Rockets job in a couple of reports last month, with former Boston Celtics coach Ime Udoka being rumored as a Raptors possibility. We'll get into that more later on in this video. But then things got weird when Nick Nurse expanded on his future before a game in Philadelphia, saying he'd evaluate his future with the club after the season. I felt for him to say that then, you knew something was up. I mean, a coach doesn't make that remark when his team is literally in the most important part of the season, especially when you looked at where the Raptors were. They were fighting to get into a better play-in spot and fighting to make the playoffs. So that's when you knew that something maybe was on the horizon. But still, like, I expressed his opinion many times, whether it was on this channel or other podcasts, that for as bad as things got with the whole Nick Nurse situation here in Toronto, I did give it the benefit of the doubt that he would be back for another season, but obviously that is not the case. So I personally was surprised by this when the news broke because, yeah, I thought Nick Nurse would be back at least one more year, but it seems like both sides came to this mutual decision since Ujiri and Nurse met multiple times this past week. And as I said on Twitter, whether you love him or hate him, you gotta respect the fact that Nick Nurse goes down as the greatest coach in Raptors franchise history. It's not even close. Look, I know he had the team in place in 2019, and you can say all that, but he did do a hell of a job helping to deliver a championship to Toronto. And then even the year after that, when Kawhi left and there were a lot of changes on that team, a lot of people thought, media pundits thought, that the Raptors were just going to go back to irrelevancy and be a lottery team. But that Raptors team, let's not forget, I know it was a weird year with the bubble and everything, but they had a solid record and they were 1 win away from returning to the Eastern Conference Finals. So Nick Nurse, all things considered, did a great job here with the Toronto Raptors, and I do wish him the best. I wish him all the best on his next venture. And I do think if it is the Rockets, he's going to do a solid job there. And it's going to be a different situation for Nurse, right? Obviously going from this one with the Raptors, a team that had won a championship and was expected to be in the thick of things in the East to a Rockets team, if he does, of course, land there, they're years away from being close to a contender. And obviously, they're going to have some intriguing young talent there, and they might even have the first overall pick in Victor Wembanyama, so that would be huge. So, yeah, it's time for a new chapter for Nick Nurse and the Toronto Raptors. And Nick Nurse, he was not perfect, but you can't dismiss the job he did here with the Raptors. And I think this was just one of those situations where Nick Nurse and the Raptors organization / team just grew apart. Nick Nurse's time here ran its course, and this is probably the best thing for both sides, just to move on and move forward from this. So, yeah, I mean, it's wild how, just like that, we are in for a new change with the Raptors head coaching position. And now, speaking of this change and this new chapter for the Raptors might already have their next coach in mind, as Woj also mentioned that Nick Nurse's firing clears the way for Ime Udoka to become a serious candidate to replace him, sources told ESPN. And when you look at Ime Udoka, he has a long relationship with Ujiri and is expected to be a prominent part of the Raptors coaching search, sources said. Udoka was, of course, suspended by the Celtics before the start of the 2022-2023 season for multiple violations of team rules. He was replaced by Joe Mazzulla, who was given the permanent coaching position with the Celtics in February. And Udoka, when he was in San Antonio, previously interviewed with the Raptors back in 2018 before the team ultimately hired Nick Nurse. So there's a big connection there between the Toronto Raptors and Ime Udoka. Now, some other names to look out for: Patrick Mutombo and Jerry Stackhouse, per Shams of The Athletic and Stadium. Patrick Mutombo and Jerry Stackhouse are considered potential options for the Raptors as well, as both men have previous experience with the organization. And Adrian Griffin is another potential name to look out for. So we'll see who the Raptors ultimately go with. I personally hope the Raptors hire Ime Udoka. Look, I know he's landed himself in a lot of heat for his off-the-court antics, but when you talk about what he's capable of doing on the court, I think this is the right guy for the job. Udoka did an amazing job with a young Boston Celtics team and finally got that team over the hump as they made the finals last season, and he really got that team right defensively. And Udoka is known as a defensive coach, which I like, so I think Ime Udoka would have a lot of success here with the right mix of players. Now, beyond the head coaching hire, it'll be interesting to see what the Raptors do next. Based on what Ujiri said, it seems like there will be a lot of changes made on this team. Now, my opinion on what this team should do has not changed. If you want to watch my previous video of where do the Raptors go from here after they got eliminated from playoff contention, you could go watch that video. And yeah, my opinion has not changed from that video. And of course, we know the Raptors have some big decisions to make with Jakob Poeltl, Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., their draft pick, and any other potential trades / signings they could make this summer. So I'll have more draft and offseason coverage of this team when stuff actually happens, and when the Raptors do announce their next head coach officially, I'll definitely have a piece on that. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about Nick Nurse's firing, speculate what's next, and I think it will be Udoka, and I would be okay with that. But knowing the Raptors, I mean, this is a team that usually sometimes goes in-house with their coaches, so it wouldn't surprise me either if they go in a different direction and don't end up hiring Udoka. But we'll see what happens, guys. But I want to hear your opinion on this. What was your reaction to Nick Nurse being fired on this Friday? And do you think that this was the right decision? And also, who do you expect to be the Raptors head coach? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I read all of them. Again, guys, thank you so much for your continued support on this channel. Please drop a like and subscribe for more Raptors and NBA content. I'm covering the NBA postseason as well, guys. So if you guys can support my other NBA content, that would be greatly appreciated. That is it for me. This is Lucas signing off. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all again in the next video.